So, imagine for a second that you are just sitting at your desk, right? You open up a piece of software, you move your mouse, and you click a button.
Right, just a completely normal thing.
Exactly. It's a routine action, something you do like 100 times a day. But now imagine that you have to completely stop what you're doing, take a screenshot of that exact click, print that screenshot out on a physical piece of paper, and then sign your name in ink across the bottom.
Oh, and don't forget filing it away in a massive, heavy binder.
Yes. Just to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you actually clicked it. I mean, it sounds insane.
It does. And then, multiply that. Imagine having to execute that exact manual sequence for every single digital interaction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, every minor system update, every little interface tweak across an entire multi-billion-dollar global industry. I mean, it sounds like some sort of archaic bureaucratic punishment, but it was essentially the daily operating reality for life sciences and pharmaceutical manufacturing for years.
It is the absolute definition of a nightmare scenario for anyone trying to actually get work done. But that was reality. So today we're diving into how the industry finally found an escape route from that nightmare.
Right.
We are looking at this incredibly detailed breakdown by Omer Simon. He's the CEO and co-founder of Validfor. And the article is titled GAMP 5 Second Edition Deep Dive, How Critical Thinking Redefines Validation.
It's a great piece.
It really is. And our mission for you today is to understand a massive, sweeping paradigm shift in how complex industries guarantee safety and quality. We're talking about a fundamental move away from this culture of mindless paperwork toward a brand new era of intelligent risk management, a concept the industry is aggressively branding as critical thinking. Okay, let's unpack this. Because reading about a highly advanced professional environment where engineers are forced to literally print a report for a simple button click is just, I mean, it's mind-boggling.
It really is. And what's fascinating here is that Elmer Simmons' article isn't just, a technical manual about software validation, even though, sure, that is the specific subject matter on the page.
Right.
It actually serves as a perfect real-world case study on what happens when a system originally designed to ensure absolute compliance actually mutates over time.
Mutates. Like, it gets worse.
Exactly. It starts suffocating the very innovation it's supposed to protect. The article details how a major 2022 regulatory update basically offered a blueprint for an industry to fundamentally rewire its own brain.
Wow.
Yeah. And for context, if you follow pharmaceutical manufacturing, you probably know the ISPE, the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering. They're essentially the global group that sets the gold standard engineering playbooks.
Right. The rule makers.
Exactly.
Mm.
And in 2022, they released the long-awaited second edition of GAMP 5, which stands for Good Automated Manufacturing Practice. And that document is the exact escape route Simon is analyzing.
Okay, so to really appreciate why that 2022 update was such a massive, lung-filling breath of fresh air for software engineers and quality managers, we kind of have to logically look at the dark ages it was designed to replace, right?
Oh, absolutely. The dark ages is a good way to put it.
Yeah, we have to look at the mechanics of the trap itself, the system that demanded all those signed, printed screenshots in the first place.
Right. Well, the trap was an engineering framework known as the V model, which, it ruled the industry with an iron fist for over a decade.
An iron fist.
Totally.
Yeah.
The text describes the V model not as a flexible guideline, but as a rigid, non-negotiable checklist. It was this perfectly symmetrical, linear process.
So how did it actually work?
So on the left side of the V, you had your design phase, user requirements, functional specifications, design specifications, and finally, coding.
Okay, makes sense.
And then on the right side of the V, you had the corresponding testing.
Yeah.
Unit testing, integration testing, system testing, and acceptance testing. The reigning mantra of this era was absolute. It was literally validate everything, document everything, print everything.
Man, which naturally created a culture of what the author perfectly calls compliance for compliance's sake. Like, you weren't necessarily making a better or safer medical product, right?
No.
You were just generating literal mountains of paper solely to satisfy auditors who just wanted to see the paper.
Exactly. It became about the paper, not the product.
Thinking about the mechanics of this, it's exactly like wrapping an entire house in thick layers of industrial bubble wrap just because you're terrified of breaking a single coffee mug in the kitchen cabinet.
That is a great analogy.
Right. Sure, it is technically safe, but no one can actually walk through the hallways. The primary function of the house is entirely destroyed by the bloated effort to protect it. But wait, hold on. If the V model was the gold standard for over 10 years and everyone just accepted it, Why the sudden pivot in 2022? Like, why did they suddenly realize that treating every single system with the exact same level of extreme scrutiny was actually a bad thing?
Well, because the mathematics of that approach simply broke down. I mean, treating everything equally destroys efficiency at a foundational level.
How so?
It sounds counterintuitive at first, right?
Sure.
You'd naturally assume that applying maximum scrutiny everywhere all the time is the safest possible route.
Yeah, especially with medicine.
Exactly. But look at the mechanics of how teams actually operate. When every single low-risk feature, say, like a minor cosmetic change to a user dashboard, requires the exact same mountain of sequential paperwork as a highly critical, life-saving algorithm that calculates drug dosages.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, your cycle times completely explode. Software releases that should take weeks end up taking years.
Wow. Years for a dashboard update.
Literally. The realization the ISPE finally codified was that this massive pile of paper was providing a dangerous illusion of quality. You aren't actually focusing on safety, you're just focusing on producing the evidence of compliance.
Right, checking the boxes.
Exactly. It was actively preventing teams from releasing better, safer, more innovative software because they were just buried under the weight of validating low-level features that simply didn't matter to the end patient.
The illusion of quality, that is a chilling phrase when you're talking about pharmaceuticals. So, if blanket testing is breaking the system, the industry desperately needed a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer.
Precisely.
And according to the text, that scalpel is a framework introduced in the second edition called CSA, or Computer Software Assurance.
Yeah, CSA is the mechanical pivot point for this entire industry shift.
Hmm.
It flips the old model completely on its head.
How does it do that?
Well, under the old V model, engineers spent roughly 80% of their time generating documentation, and maybe 20% actually testing the software to see if it worked.
Wait, 80% on paperwork?
Yes, it's wild. But CSA aims to invert that ratio. And it does this by routing every single decision through one foundational, uncompromising question.
Right, the litmus test. The framework asks, does this feature or system actually impact patient safety, product quality, or data integrity?
Exactly. It acts as a binary gateway. Think of how a software engineer would actually apply this, right? If the answer to that question is no, say they're rolling out a minor internal tracking tool for office supplies, or, updating the font color on an internal reporting dashboard.
Stuff that doesn't touch the medicine.
Exactly. Then that system is instantly freed from the heavy, burdensome validation protocols. You don't ignore it, obviously, but you don't wrap it in bubble wrap. You might just do a quick, undocumented check to ensure it functions.
Okay, but what if the answer is yes?
If the answer is yes, like if this software feature directly controls the temperature of a bioreactor manufacturing a vaccine, then every ounce of your testing effort, your most rigorous scripts, and your most intense scrutiny are concentrated right there.
So, what does this all mean? To me, it sounds exactly like triage in a hospital emergency room.
Like, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. You don't put a full-body cast on someone who walks in with a paper cut, because if you do, you won't have the plaster, the doctors, or the time available when someone with a shattered femur comes through the double doors. You prioritize the deployment of your resources based on the actual potential for harm.
Yes, exactly.
But wait, I have to stop you there, though. You are telling companies in life or death industries to explicitly test certain things less.
I know how it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't dialing back the testing automatically dial up the risk for the end patient?
This raises an important question, and it is the central psychological hurdle the industry had to overcome. It feels incredibly risky to take away the safety nets, but the underlying mechanics of CSA prove the exact opposite. By removing the crushing, time-consuming burden of testing low-risk items, you actually increase overall safety.
Wait, really? Walk me through that causality. How does testing less equal more safety?
Okay, look at the triage analogy you just brought up. When the doctors and nurses are no longer wasting 5 hours a day putting full-body casts on paper cuts, what are they doing with those 5 hours?
Well, they're focusing all their energy and attention on the critical trauma patients.
Exactly. That is the core mechanism of critical thinking in the GAMP 5 second edition. When you eliminate the compliance for compliance's sake on the low-risk UI tweaks and internal tools, you are finally allowing highly skilled engineering and quality teams to focus 100% of their brain power, their time, and their diagnostic resources on the high-risk elements that actually dictate patient outcomes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you aren't diluting your safety efforts across 1,000 meaningless mouse clicks. You're laser focusing them on the core algorithms that actually matter. It elevates the safety of the entire system by simply removing the static and the distraction of unnecessary compliance. You finally let the experts do their actual jobs.
Okay, you're clearing the static so you can actually hear the signal.
Beautifully said, yes.
That makes complete sense. And what Omer Simon points out next in the Validfor article is that clearing that static, freeing up those engineering resources from unnecessary testing isn't just about saving time or money. It's the exact key required to unlock the use of modern technology.
It is. The 2022 update fundamentally changes the technological landscape. The second edition explicitly supports modern architectures that the old V model physically could not accommodate.
Like what?
We're talking about the adoption of cloud computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and iterative software development models like Agile.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The irony here is just so thick you could cut it with a knife. You have this incredibly advanced industry dealing with literal cutting-edge, life-saving science like mRNA, targeted gene therapies.
Right, the most advanced stuff on the planet.
Exactly. And yet, historically, they were essentially forced to manage their digital systems using the mentality of a 19th century filing cabinet.
It's absurd when you put it like that.
Yeah, it is. But if you're listening to this and you work in software, you know that modern development is all about speed and iteration. So how exactly does moving to a continuous update pipeline or an agile framework directly clash with that old V model? Why were they incompatible?
To understand the clash, you really have to look at how the old waterfall method functioned mechanically. Waterfall requires absolute frozen finality before you can move to the next phase.
Frozen finality.
Right. You write the requirements, you lock them down. You build the software, you lock it down. You test it, you lock it down. Now, that absolute finality is perfect if your end goal is producing a static printed document for a regulatory auditor.
Right. It's the difference between painting a portrait and directing a live stage play.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like in the old V model, you're painting a portrait. Once the paint dries, it's done, it's static, you hang it on the wall, and you can write a report about exactly what it looks like. But agile software development is like directing a stage play.
Yeah, it's constantly moving.
Exactly. It evolves, the actors improvise, the lighting shifts based on audience reaction. You can't write a static report on something that changes every single night.
That's a great way to visualize it. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, embracing agile and continuous updates means the regulatory bodies are finally accepting a fundamental reality of the 21st century software is a living, evolving entity.
A living entity.
Yeah. When a company uses a cloud platform like AWS or Azure, the software provider is pushing security patches and feature updates continuously, sometimes daily. You literally cannot use a 6-month paper-based V-model process to validate a system that just updated itself this morning.
It's just too slow.
Way too slow. So by endorsing Agile, GAMP 5 second edition allows companies to validate software continuously, matching the actual cadence of the technology itself.
A living, evolving entity. And if you accept that software is living and constantly updating in real time, the logical conclusion the text draws is that human hands and physical paper are simply no longer mathematically sufficient to track it. I mean, a human physically cannot take screenshots fast enough to validate a continuous deployment pipeline.
You can't. The math just doesn't work. Which is why the GAMP 5 second edition strongly pushes for the use of automated software tools to manage the validation process itself. You manage living software with living software.
Right. And the article details how using these digital platforms enables automated test management. It captures electronic evidence in the background and maps it directly to the system requirements automatically.
Without human intervention.
Exactly. And crucially, it eliminates the human error that is just inherently baked into taking manual screenshots and copy-pasting them into a Word document. Omer Simon poses a fantastic rhetorical question in the text. He asks, why use paper to validate digital software?
It's so blunt, but so true.
It really highlights the absurdity. It's like printing out all your emails every morning, reading them with a highlighter, and then scanning them back into the computer to reply.
It is entirely redundant.
Yeah.
And the text gets very specific about how this new automated risk-based strategy actually functions on a practical level, specifically regarding how testing is executed. For those lower risk features we discussed earlier, the ones that don't impact patient safety, the guidelines suggest utilizing unscripted testing or ad hoc testing.
Wait, unscripted testing? What does that actually look like for a software tester sitting at a keyboard? Like, how is it different from what they were doing before?
Well, in the old days of formal scripted testing,
Hmm.
a tester would be given a document with maybe 50 highly specific steps, like click this button, verify this pixel, enter this exact string of text, take a screenshot.
So they were basically robots.
Exactly, it was
Ah.
robotic. But unscripted testing, which the new guidelines encourage for low-risk items, is goal-oriented and exploratory. You tell the tester, here is the new inventory dashboard. Your goal is to try and break the search function. Go. The tester uses their actual expertise and intuition to explore the software organically, and they only document anomalies or failures.
That sounds so much more efficient.
It is. You don't need a rigid script to prove a basic search bar works. You just need a skilled human to verify it. You reserve the heavy, formal, step-by-step scripted testing strictly for the high-risk algorithms calculating the medicine dosages.
And this is where the article brings in the really cutting-edge stuff, specifically tools like Validfor AI. The text notes that artificial intelligence is now being used to analyze complex data sets and system behaviors to actually justify these validation strategies.
Yes, this is the frontier.
But wait, hold on. If an AI is analyzing the system and spitting out a validation strategy, aren't we just trading one massive problem for another?
What do you mean?
Well, aren't we just trading a human mindlessly checking a box for an AI black box doing the exact same thing behind a digital curtain? If the machine tells us what to test, aren't we losing the exact human critical thinking the ISPE is trying to promote?
That is a highly critical distinction to make, and I'm glad you brought it up, because the text is quite clear on the exact role of AI in this new paradigm. The AI does not remove the human from the equation, nor does it make the final decision.
Okay.
The AI is deployed as a synthesis engine to support the human's critical thinking by providing a massive, data-backed foundation.
So it's synthesizing data, not making executive decisions. How does that work mechanically then?
Think about the sheer volume of data in a modern software deployment. A human quality manager cannot manually review 10,000 lines of code, cross-reference them with 5 years of historical bug reports, and then perfectly map them to 100 different regulatory requirements to determine risk.
Right, that would take months.
Exactly. A tool like Validfor AI uses natural language processing and data analytics to instantly parse those requirements, identify historical patterns of failure, and flag the high-risk areas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it handles the incredibly complex data synthesis that a human couldn't possibly process efficiently. By doing that heavy lifting, it provides a clear mathematical map. This allows the human workers to stop acting like data gatherers and empowers them to start acting like intelligent risk managers.
I see.
The human looks at the AI's analysis, applies the real-world context, and makes the final judgment call.
They stop acting like robots and start acting like intelligent risk managers. I mean, that really is the thesis of the entire paradigm shift, isn't it?
It really is. The AI is a flashlight.
Mm-hmm.
The human is still the one navigating the path. It is a total transformation of how quality is perceived, measured, and ultimately achieved in complex engineering.
Which brings us to the big takeaway for you listening right now. The era of check-the-box validation, that dark age of compliance for compliance's sake, is officially dead and buried. What Omer Simon's deep dive reveals is that by fully embracing critical thinking and leveraging these modern automated tools, engineering teams are finally able to drastically reduce their cycle times, cut their operational costs, and genuinely improve the actual quality and safety of their products.
Yes, rather than just generating a meaningless paper trail to appease an auditor, they're replacing the illusion of quality with actual, verifiable safety.
And even if you don't work in pharmaceuticals or life sciences or software validation, there is a deeply profound lesson here for you. You have probably experienced this in your own corporate rollouts or daily workflows.
Oh, almost certainly.
It is about recognizing the exact moment when the process becomes more important than the goal. It's an open invitation to audit your own professional life. Look at your daily tasks and ask yourself, am I just wrapping the house in bubble wrap?
Right.
Am I executing this task just to satisfy a rigid process? Or am I actually applying critical thinking to achieve a fundamentally better outcome?
It is incredibly easy to fall into the trap of confusing sheer activity with actual achievement. The GAMP 5 framework is, at its core, a psychological tool to break out of that trap.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to chew on, something that builds on the mechanics we've discussed today. We talked about how the industry is now relying on AI tools like Validfor AI to analyze incredibly complex system behaviors and provide those data-backed justifications for what is safe and what isn't.
Right, the AI is a flashlight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The AI synthesizes the variables so the human can make the call. But what happens 5 or 10 years down the line when those underlying AI systems become so incredibly complex and process so many billions of variables that human critical thinking can no longer actually comprehend the AI's justification?
That's a scary thought.
If we reach a point where AI is fundamentally analyzing other AI systems to determine what constitutes patient safety, where does human critical thinking actually begin and end? Do we eventually reach a threshold where we just have to blindly trust the machine's math? It's a fascinating question about the limits of human oversight and, well, something to ponder the next time you mindlessly click a routine button on your screen. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.